Hello everyone, hope you're doing well and Shva Tov. And let's dive straight into today's daf, Bava Kamma Daf 84 Amud A. So carrying on from the last daf, the sage objects his derivation and say, what is the difficulty in saying that his eye should be blinded? Perhaps as the one who caused the injury took the sight from the injured party's eye, the most one states that the court should take the sight from his eye as well, no matter the size of the eye. Since you did not say so, then by the same logic, in the case of a small person who killed a large person, or a large person who killed a small person, how do we kill the murderer? If one suggests that in such a case a monetary penalty will be imposed, the Torah stated you should have one man of law. Leviticus 24:22 teaching that the law shall be equal for all of you. So the punishment must be the same for all murderers. Rather, explain that since the murderer took the life of the victim, the most one states that the court should likewise take life from him. So too, since the one who caused the injury took the sight from the eye of the injured party, the most one states that the court should likewise take the sight from his eye. Therefore, the Gemara does not accept the derivation of Rabbi Dostai ben Yehuda in accordance with the objection of the sages. They want to present another derivation. It is taught in another bride, so that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, an eye for an eye, Leviticus 24:20, is referring to monetary restitution. Do you say this is referring to monetary restitution, or is it only teaching that one who causes the injury must lose an actual eye? There may be a case where there was a blind person and he blinded another, or there was one with a severed limb and he severed the limb of another, or if there was a lame person and he caused another to be lame. In this case, how can I fulfill an eye for an eye? Literally, when he's already lacking a limb that must be injured. If one will suggest that in that case a monetary penalty will be imposed, that can be refuted. But the Torah stated you should have one manner of law. That's 24:22, which teaches that the law shall be equal for all of you. The sages object to this derivation and say, what is the difficulty? Perhaps in a case where it is possible to render the guilty party liable according to the punishment listed in the Torah, it is possible, and the court does so, but in a case where it is not possible to enact such a punishment, it is not possible, and we exempt him. And if you do not say that punishing one and exempting another is not counter to the principle of one man of law, then by the same logic, in the case of one who has a wound that will cause him to die within 12 months, a treifa, and who killed a healthy person, what do we do to him? The commentators ask, why does the Gemara assume that a treifa cannot be put to death? Rashi answers that the court cannot convict the treifa in the first place. There is a halakha principle that a court can accept testimony only if, should it expose a conspiracy by the witnesses, those witnesses can receive the same judgment they sought for the one about whom they were testifying. Just as killing a treifa is not considered murder, 188a, capital punishment for a treifa will not be considered actual execution. But capital punishment for conspiring witnesses would be actual execution. Therefore, the court cannot accept testimony about a treifa from healthy witnesses in a capital case. Based on his understanding, the Meiri writes that if a treifa were to commit murder in the presence of a court, in which case witnesses are not needed to secure a conviction, a treifa will be liable to receive court-imposed capital punishment. Alternatively, some understand from the Rambam and say from the Zichin Hilchot Nizkei Mammon 10:7 that a treifa is considered dead even while alive. Therefore, even though a treifa can be convicted for murder, capital punishment cannot fulfill the principle of taking a life for life, and that's from the Kovet Shurim 239. Rather, one must say that in a case where it is possible to render the guilty party liable according to the punishment listed in the Torah, it is possible, and the court does so. But in a case where it is not possible to do so, it is not possible, and we exempt him. And treifa murders someone, and the court does not put him to death based on the testimony of witnesses, because those witnesses cannot be convicted for conspiring testimony. If the treifa murders someone in the presence of a court, he is liable to receive capital punishment based on the verse in Deuteronomy 17:7, you shall remove evil from your midst. I'm safe in the Zichin Hilchot V'Seich U'Shmirat HaNefesh 2:9, and Hilchot Nizkei Mammon 10:7, and Sefer Shoftim Hilchot Eidut 27. Therefore, the Gemara does not accept the derivation of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai in accordance with the objection of the sages. The Gemara presents another derivation. The school of Rabbi Shmuel taught that the verse states, a fracture for a fracture, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. As he has given a blemish to a person, so shall it be given unto him. 24:20, and giving can refer only to payment of money. The Gemara challenges, but if that is so, then when the same verse states, as he has given yitin, a blemish to a person, does the word yitin also refer to money? The word yitin means that he caused actual injury, even though it employs a term whose literal meaning is give. The sages say in response, the rabbis of the school of Rabbi Shmuel are interpreting a superfluous verse. Now it is written, if a man gives a blemish to his neighbor, as he has done, so shall it be done to him, in Leviticus 24:19. So why do I need the verse? So shall it be done to him, in Leviticus 24:20. Learn from the repetition that the verse is referring to monetary restitution. They won't ask, but if this is so, why do I need the verse? As he has given yitin, a blemish to a person, in Leviticus 24:20. What does the usage of the term yitin teach? The one answers, in fact, it does not teach anything, but rather, since one needs to write at the end of that verse, so shall it be given unto him, where the employment of a term giving is accurate. The first one also wrote early in the verse, as he has given yitin, a blemish to a person. The Gemara presents another derivation. The school of Rabbi Chia taught that the verse states, with regard to conspiring witnesses, and your eye shall not pity, a life for life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot. Deuteronomy 19:21. They teach that the witnesses pay compensation with that which is given from hand to hand. And what type of compensation is that? Monetary restitution. The Gemara challenges, but if that is so, is the phrase a foot for foot, Deuteronomy 19:21, also like that? I.e., is it teaching that the witnesses pay compensation with an item passed from foot to foot? The sages say that the rabbis of the school of Rabbi Chia are interpreting a superfluous phrase in the verse. Now it is written, and you shall do unto him as he purported to do to his brother, in Deuteronomy 19:19. If it enters your mind that to say that the verse means this literally, why don't you specify a hand for a hand? Deuteronomy 19:21. The punishment will be whatever had he purported to do to his brother. Learn from the extra phrase that the punishment is monetary restitution. If so, why do I need the phrase of foot for foot? Deuteronomy 19:21. Since it is written hand for hand, then one also wrote in the Torah foot for foot. The Gemara presents another derivation. Abai says that this principle is derived from that which is taught in the school of Rabbi Chizkiah. As the school of Rabbi Chizkiah taught that the Torah states an eye for an eye in Exodus 21:24, and the life for life, Exodus 21:23, but not an eye for an eye and the life for an eye. If it enters your mind to say that the verse means this literally, it could be times when you find a case where both an eye and a life are taken for an eye, i.e., when one who has caused damage is so weak that as the court blinds his eye, his soul departs from his body. The Gemara objects, what is the difficulty? Perhaps we evaluate the physical condition of the guilty party. If we can withstand this punishment, then we do blind his eye, and if he cannot withstand this punishment, we do not do so, and he goes unpunished. And if we evaluate him and determine that he can withstand this punishment, and we do so to him and blind his eye, and yet his soul departs as his body as a result, if he dies, he will die. Didn't we learn in a Mishnah with regard to lashes in Malachah 21b? If one was sentenced to be flogged and the court evaluated him and determined that he could withstand a certain number of lashes, and he dies at the hand of the officer tasked with administering the lashes, then the officer is exempt, even though the one who was flogged was not sentenced to the death penalty. Therefore, the Gemara does not accept the derivation of Abaye. If an officer of the court carried out a punishment of flogging according to the number of lashes that the court determined the guilty party could withstand, and the guilty party died, the officer is exempt from liability for his death. Rambam Sefer Shovtim Hilchot Sanhedrin 16:12. The Gemara presents another derivation. Rav Zeved said in the name of Baba that the verse states a wound for a wound, Exodus 21:25, to teach that the one who injures another must pay compensation for pain, even in a case where he pays compensation for damage. And if it enters your mind that the phrase an eye for an eye, Exodus 21:24, refers to the removal of an actual eye from the one who injured the other, then just as it is so that the injured party has pain from the loss of an eye, the one who caused him injury also has pain when the court moves his eye. Why then does the Torah require that he pay compensation for pain as well? The Gemara objects, and what is difficulty? Perhaps there's a person who is delicate. So what does that mean? Inish the sensation of pain and sensitivity to pain are not the same for all people. Some people have a low threshold for pain and suffer greatly from injuries that other people would scarcely notice. This is primarily as physiological difference based on nerve sensitivity. Psychologically, some people adapt to pain and can function normally despite it, while other people, whom the Gemara describes here as delicate, are debilitated by any physical pain. Since the indemnity for pain is based on the subjective pain suffered by the injured party, there can be a vast difference between the amount of compensation from one person to the next. So he has more pain, and there is a person who is not delicate, and so he does not have the same amount of pain. Therefore, even if the court actually removes an eye for an eye, the one who caused the injury might still need to compensate the injured party for pain. What is the practical difference when the Torah states a wound for a wound in Exodus 21:25? It renders the one who caused the injury liable to give the injured party compensation for the difference between them in pain tolerance. Therefore, the Gemara does not accept the derivation of Rav Zevid. The Gemara presents another derivation. Rav Papa said in the name of Rava, that concerning one who is injured by another, who must pay for damage, the verse states, if he rises again and walks out upon his staff, then he that struck him shall be absolved. Only he shall pay for his loss of livelihood and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. Exodus 21:19, which teaches that one who injures another must pay compensation for medical costs, even in a case where he pays compensation for damage. And if it enters your mind that the phrase an eye for an eye, Exodus 21:24, is referring to an actual eye, then just as it is so that the injured party needs healing, the one who caused him the injury also needs healing after the court removes his eye. Why then does the Torah require that he pay compensation for medical costs as well? The Gemara objects, what is the difficulty? Perhaps there is one whose flesh heals quickly. The time it takes for a wound to heal varies from person to person. Some people suffer from illnesses, such as diabetes, that causes wounds to heal more slowly. The healing process also depends on the various mechanisms and components of blood coagulation, which may make recovery slower or faster for different people. And there is another whose flesh does not heal quickly. Therefore, if the court actually removes an eye for an eye, the one who caused the injury might still need to compensate the injured party for medical costs. What about the difference when the Torah states, and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed, Exodus 21:19? It renders the one who caused the injury liable to give the injured party compensation for the difference between their respective medical costs. The Gemara presents another derivation of Ashi said that the fact that the one who injures another pays monetary compensation is derived from a verbal analogy for the word for, as written with regard to injuries caused to people from the word for, as written with regard to an ox that gored another ox. It is written here an eye for an eye in Exodus 21:24, and it's written there with regard to a foreign ox that gored the ox of another. He shall pay ox for an ox. Exodus 21:36. Just as that the verse does not mean that the owner pays compensation for an actual ox, but rather pays monetary restitution. So to hear one who injures another pays monetary restitution. The Gemara asks, what did you see that led you to derive the halacha from a verbal analogy of the word for, as stated in the verse with regard to injuries to a person from the word for, as stated with regard to an ox? Let us learn a verbal analogy of the word for, as stated in the verse with regard to injuries to a person from the word for, as stated with regard to a person, as it is written about one who kills another. You shall give a life for life, Exodus 21:23, just as there the court punishes the guilty party by taking his actual life. So to hear, why not say that the court should take his actual eye? The sages say in response, the halacha concerning damages is derived from a verse concerning damages, and the halacha concerning damages is not derived from a verse concerning death. The Gemara objects, on the contrary, say that the halacha concerning a person is derived from a verse concerning a person, and the halacha concerning a person is not derived from a verse concerning animals. Rather, Rav retracted his original statement and said a different derivation. Halacha is derived from a verbal analogy of the word for, as written with regard to injuries from the word for, as written with regard to a man who rapes a woman who must pay monetary compensation. The verse states, then the man that lay with her shall give to the girl's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife. For he has afflicted her, he may not send her away all of his days, Deuteronomy 21:29. Based on this verbal analogy, the halacha concerning a person is derived from a verse concerning a person. The halacha concerning damages is derived from a verse concerning damages. It is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Eliezer says, the verse that states an eye for an eye, says 21:24, is referring to an actual eye. The Gemara asks, can it enter your mind that the verse is referring to an actual eye? Doesn't Rabbi Eliezer understand the verse like all these Tanaim who explain that the verse is referring to monetary payment? Rambo said in response, Rabbi Eliezer means to say that the court does not appraise the injured party as a slave to assess compensation for the injury. Abai said to Rabba, rather, like whom does the court appraise the injured party? If we say the court appraises him like a free man, does the free man have monetary value? Rather, Rabbi Ashi said, Rabbi Eliezer means to say that the court does not appraise the injured party as if he was going to be slaughtered as a slave. Rather, he appraise the one who caused him damage. Ashi understands Rabbi Eliezer opinion to be that the payment required to one who caused the injury is not defined as compensation, but rather as ransom. This is similar to the concept stated in the Braita, but if you do take ransom for one who severed another's extremities into 83b, in essence, one who injures another should have the same injury inflicted upon him. According to Rabbi Eliezer, the Torah dictates that the guilty party pays a ransom to limit its obligation, the value of which is measured according to his estimated value in the slave market, rather than the value of the injured party. The court appraises how much the latter's value would be reduced were he to sustain the same injury he caused to the injured party, and he pays this amount as indemnity. The Gemara relates, there was a certain donkey that severed the hand of a child. Even though donkeys are not carnivores and are not usually predatory animals, they occasionally bite out of self-defense or agitation. The donkey's jaws and teeth are extremely strong, and its bite can break bones or even sever a person's hand. The case came before Bava Kamma Daf was a judge in Pumbedita who instituted several ordinances, including one that established that people should use a specific type of measure for measuring liquids. He was a disciple of Rav Chisda and of Sheshet and a contemporary of Rava. He disputed many of his rulings. He also originated a number of Agadic interpretations. He said to the officers of the court, go appraise the 4 types of indemnity for the child. Is right that Papa Bashmul initially thought that the injury had been caused by a person and therefore requested that the types of indemnity be assessed. Afterwards, he was informed that the injury had been caused by an animal. Papa Bashmul was certainly familiar with the straightforward halacha that the owner of an animal causes damage pays compensation only for damage and does not pay the other types of indemnity. Rava said to him, but didn't we learn in the mission there are 5 types of indemnity? Rav Papa Bashmul said to him, I was saying to include the indemnity the responsible party is liable to pay other than damage. Abai said to him, but this was not a donkey that caused this injury. The owner of the donkey that causes injury pays only for the damage. Rav Papa Bashmul said to the officers of the court, go appraise for the child the value of his damage. They said to him, but doesn't the child need to be appraised as a slave? At first glance, the question is surprising. How else did the officers of the court understand of Papa Bashmul's directive to appraise the child? Some answer that they were alluding to the opinion of Rava, which the Gemara subsequently mentions that any payment of praise according to the one's value as a slave is not collected by courts in Babylonia. Papa Bashmul responded that he does not agree with that opinion of Rava, and they should appraise the child and collect payment. He said to them, go appraise him as a slave. The father of the child said to them, I do not want my child to be appraised as a slave, because this matter would demean him. They said to the father, but you are acting to the detriment of the child, as he will not receive compensation for his injury. He said to them, when he matures, I will appraise him with my own money, appease him with my own money, rather than see him demean now. The Gemara relates another incident. There was a certain ox that chewed the Alice. Alice, the root of the word Alice is the same as that of Laas, the Hebrew word for chewed, with the first 2 letters exchanged through metathesis. Another example of this phenomenon is keves and kesev, both of which are Hebrew words for sheep. This is a common linguistic phenomenon. The hand of a child injuring him, the court came before Rava. He said to the officers of the court, go appraise him as a slave. They said to Rava, but wasn't it you, master, who said, with regard to anyone who is appraised as a slave, any punishment that requires a court to appraise someone's value as a slave is not collected in the present. Therefore, if one person injured another, the court does not require him to pay the monetary value of the damage. I'm a Sefer Shoftim Hilchot Sanhedrin 5:10, Hilchot Mishpat 1:5. in order to determine the amount of the monetary payment. That penalty is not collected by the courts in Babylonia. I have said to them, it is not necessary to appraise his value in order to force the guilty party to pay restitution, but it is nevertheless necessary to determine his value. This is because if the injured party seizes the tafas, although any payment that is appraised according to someone's value as a slave is not collected by the courts in the present, if the injured party seizes property equal to the value of the cost of the damage from the one who caused him injury, the court does not appropriate it from him. The Ramah citing the Rosh writes, if the injured party says, appraise the damage so that I will know how much property I can seize, the court should not perform the appraisal. Only if the injured party already seized property does the court appraise how much he may keep. Rambam Sefer Shoftim Hilchot Hedin 5:17 Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat 1:5. Rav instructed the officer of the court to set the amount of payment at that time, so that if the injured party were to seize property from the owner of the ox in the future, the court would know whether or not he would be permitted to keep what he seized, says Rashi. The Rosh finds it difficult that Rava would order an appraiser simply to prepare for such a scenario. He cites a version of the text that reads, if the injured party had seized, if it already happened to have property in his possession belonging to the one who injured him, then Rava would order the appraisal. Others interpret Rava's statement in this way as well, says, from the one who caused him injury, and that property is equal in value to what the payment should be. The court will not compel him to return it. The Gemara knows. Rava conforms his line of reasoning, as Rava says, compensation for damage to an ox caused by an ox, and for damage to an ox caused by a person is collected by courts in Babylonia. Compensation for damage to a person caused by a person, or for damage to a person caused by an ox, is not collected by courts in Babylonia. The Gemara clarifies what is different about compensation for damage to a person caused by a person and for damage to a person caused by an ox is not collected in Babylonia. If you say that we require ordained judges to collect damages, and there are not any ordained judges in Babylonia, so too, in the case of damage caused by an ox to an ox, the damage caused by an ox by a person to an ox. That's the end of the Omid. Wish you a very good day and a very good week. All the best. Bye.